All right, here's what we're doing. We're going to draw this paper bag and make the pre-sketch. So you should have your photo, and here's how we're going to do it. On a 9 by 12 piece of paper, 9 by 12 paper, what you're going to do is like we've done maybe in the past, if you've had a couple of other assignments from me, we're going to make a 2-finger border. Just make a mark, rotate the paper, make a mark. And we're not going to worry about measuring perfect with a ruler, but just make those 4 marks, and then you could make 2 marks and use a ruler and connect them if you wanted to, or you can freehand this by looking at the edge of the paper and trying to follow along with that, right at that mark there. So this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but feel free to use a ruler or some kind of straight edge to use this if you choose to. That's all you need. And this is going to be a good way to set up for a good size. Your drawing is going to be larger than the photograph. All right, so we're also going to draw a hole to parts, and we're going to use that kind of freehand grid all at the same time. And many of you have done this kind of thing before. So what I'm going to do is take about half of this, right about there, make a little mark. I'm going to take half of this right about there, make a little mark. I'm going to take half of this, so right about there, make a little mark and make a little mark so I can have some references to go by. I can see that this corner is definitely on the left side of that, so I can just make a little mark, and I can draw a line that goes right up that corner, and that's pretty darn vertical. So again, this is drawn kind of lightly. I'm making mine a little darker so you can see it well on the video. And now I can kind of get a sense maybe of where that corner is, and we'll adjust it. It's not quite halfway over, so there's halfway, not quite. I'm going to come back. I'm just going to make a guess at a couple of landmarks. But now more importantly is to get the right perspective. So I'm going to take my pencil and follow along that angle, go from this corner, and have a good idea of where that angle goes. So it's okay to draw kind of sketchy. This angle is definitely sharper, and the space that it occupies is about half. So if I took that space, I could go 1, 2 in that space. So if I wanted to just say, so 1, 2, right about there. Again, that's a guess. That's something that we're going to work with. From this corner, I can see that there's a slight angle outward. So I'm not going to follow this line exactly. I'm going to go a slight angle outward. And this paper bag drawing is not going to be absolutely perfect, but you're going to have a good representation of what's going on here. This angle is definitely bending out a little bit, and then it kind of turns up a shade. So I'm going to bend out a little bit, and then when it gets to this corner, and I'll establish that in a moment, that's when I'm going to kind of let it bend back in a little bit. All right, we have to estimate. Here's halfway, so up a bit. Here's halfway, so up a bit. And at first, I suggest you just make this entire angle. We'll put in those details later. Remember, we're drawing whole to parts. We'll put those in later. Now I'm just going to kind of capture that angle from corner to corner. And you need to make sure your paper isn't wonky like that. They have to be kind of lined up together. So right there, right there. Now I know that's pretty darn close to get the right perspective. Here, I think you should go from this corner, not to that one, but out to this one. That's the main one out there. So again, we're going to take that angle, try to plop it in right there, and later we'll get that little tip in there. And I'm going to draw this whole opening, the whole top. So again, corner to corner. Try to get that pencil right on those 2 corners and just kind of, again, transfer that angle. Look at that. I got kind of close to where the edge of the bag is. And again, from here to there. We'll get the little bumps and lumps later. And look at that. That's starting to look pretty much like an opening of the bag. Now, I feel like this angle is going up here too much. I think it needs to kind of come down there a little bit more, just to make it feel like it's the right angle. Or maybe this one needs to go up more. See, this is the time to make some of those freehand adjustments. I think that will look a little better. Now is the time to start getting in some of the other details. There's an angle right here that shows that fold. And I'm going to try to place, whoops, I think that's a little better. There's an, between here and here, there's that tip of that little guy right there. So I'm going to do my best to place it. I think it's going to be closer to this one. So closer to this one. And again, sometimes you just have to make your best guess. And then we're going to try to draw that crease that just ends. See, this one is closer to the back side and farther away from the front side. So closer to the back side, and I'm making a guess at how far up it goes. And maybe that angle is going to be pretty darn close. We can double check it with our little angle finder. Ooh, pretty darn close. So I'm going to go through and make some of those estimates. Ooh, check this. Here's another big one. That guy right there that shows the back corner. Because check out how that back corner falls right inside that scoop. Okay, we're going to draw the little tears in the paper, this little bend, that crease back there, and the shadow, and these shapes that go in the background. And I'll come back to you when I'm almost done, but you don't need to watch me do everything. And I'll give you a couple of little tips at the very end. See you in a minute. All right, as you can see, I've kind of done all the little details and so on, and that's important to do. You want to really look close at that little curl. You want to look close at that little bump. You want to look close at how these two, there's that rip right there, and how those two kind of overlap each other. And you want to capture all those little bends and so on. I even think it's a good idea to outline where things, even like this little highlight right there, like the light catches the edge of that nicely. All those things you want to make sure to do. And then you want to darken it. And you can darken it with ink. Even though it's something that's soft and subtle, you want to make it dark here. And that little, there's a little wiggly little value right there. Make it dark here so when you trace it, it's easy to see. Okay, and I have a couple more lines to make darker. But now, since we're finished here, and show where even shadows are. Sorry, there's a shadow right here. Now there is a little shadow right there, and there's a shadow right here, and it's okay to barely put a couple of lines in those shadows to help you determine what they are later. And there's a little shadow right here. All those little things are really good to draw. Now, you can do this in any media. Okay, so it depends on how, when you trace it, what paper to use. Watercolor paper, it'll fit. Okay, that's fine. If you're going to use ink or graphite or colored pencil, and you can do a mixed media if you choose, but play around with it a little bit how they're going to mix. This is cardstock. Okay, you should have some of that. Or if you have an extra piece of Bristol board, that's fine too. Our border that we made will allow it to fit onto this smaller paper as well. But your drawing should be, as far as the size goes, and this is a pencil that's been worn down just a little bit, but it should be in there somewhere. So when you hand in your artwork in Google Classroom and you put your pencil right by it, your drawing should not be, small like this. This is not perfect. I mean, it looks pretty good. It looks like that. But there are little things that aren't quite perfect. Like where this little line is for the background. It's to the right of that little spot right there. And over here it's to the left. But I didn't want to put it over there because it would have been too small. But that doesn't matter. All those little kinds of things are no big deal. But you do want to get angles. Make sure to really work those angles first and then start to do some of the detailing. Actually, I think this line needs to go up a little higher. After looks like those two didn't line up well together. Anyway, those are all things that you can work on and try to get your pre-sketch. You're going to have to take a picture of your pre-sketch to hand it in classroom. So make sure that your lines are nice and dark and trace it really lightly on the paper. That's going to be best for what you're doing your artwork in. All right, see you soon.